She entered America's most elite STEM school, with a scholarship, a national title, and a brain built for brilliance. But on day one, her ID didn't scan. Her dorm was a janitor's closet, and her mentor said, "Try not to make waves." The same white boy she beat in the contest got a fellowship, a photo shoot, and a panel titled "Overcoming the Odds." Then her research disappeared, and an anonymous file surfaced, labeled Carter Risk Profile. What they planned next wasn't just academic. It was erasure.
Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from.
Share in the comments below. The entrance to Bellwood Institute of Science and Technology didn't look like a school gate. It looked like a lab checkpoint. Facial recognition cameras tracked every blink. Security scanners buzzed under polished pavement. Drones hovered in silence overhead, and the air felt sterile, like even the oxygen had a dress code. Journee Carter stood just outside the front arch, gripping the handle of her single duffel bag. Her hoodie sleeves were pulled low, concealing the shaking in her hands. Around her, first-year students pulled expensive luggage behind them, already laughing like they belonged. But Journee didn't feel like she was arriving. She felt like she was being processed. This wasn't a regular school. Bellwood was a dream incubator, a place for prodigies with private tutors, published papers, and last names that opened doors. It had produced 7 Nobel winners and more than a dozen tech CEOs. Its student population was overwhelmingly white, wealthy, and hand-picked. And now it had her. The viral girl from the contest. The black girl who'd shattered a rigged math competition and exposed a national scandal. She was the headline they couldn't erase, and the one they'd never planned to host. From the beginning, the signals were subtle. Too subtle to prove, but never too subtle to feel. Her dorm was an overflow microsuite, tucked behind the bioengineering lab. The other students had matching white buildings, 4-bedroom apartments, and access to rooftop study lounges. Her room? A converted janitorial closet, with industrial piping exposed above her bed. The toilet sputtered, the windows didn't open, and the Wi-Fi cut out during video calls. Temporary placement, the housing director said, smiling thinly. We had unexpected enrollment this year. Her ID badge, unlike the others, didn't list a cohort or advisor. When she asked about orientation groups, a staff member blinked. You weren't assigned one? No one had an answer, and no one seemed in a rush to fix it. In her first week, professors mispronounced her name in roll calls. Some skipped it entirely. During her Introduction to Computational Theories course, the TA paused when he saw her on the list. "Oh," he said, tilting his head. "You're the one from the event last year, right?" It wasn't a question, and that was how they referred to it. The event, never the competition, never the scandal, just a vague footnote they hoped would fade. But Journee didn't fade. She submitted her assignments early. Her coding was efficient, her logic proofs were airtight, and every time a professor questioned her method, she provided not just a solution, but a better one. Still, the reaction wasn't pride, it was surveillance. In her third week, she noticed every email she sent was followed up on with unusual speed, especially the ones questioning grading criteria. Every help request was routed through academic integrity review, a process no other students mentioned experiencing. She asked her advisor why. "Nothing to worry about," he said flatly. "We just like to make sure students are acclimating properly." That word again, acclimate, as if she hadn't already proven herself, in front of the entire country. As if she hadn't solved what no one else could. In the campus library, students whispered when she walked past. Some smiled politely, others didn't bother pretending. One group of students snickered as she walked by. "I heard she got in because of Twitter," one boy muttered. "Affirmative action gone viral," another replied. She said nothing, because she'd learned from the contest that speaking truth too loudly made people more offended by the volume than the facts. Her mentor, the one assigned by the school, was a junior marketing assistant who admitted she didn't know much about STEM. "I'm here to support you socially," she said brightly during their first meeting, "just to make sure things don't get overwhelming." Journee looked at her, wondering how someone with no technical background was expected to mentor a student designing recursive logic simulations. But she didn't complain, because she knew what happened when she did. During her first lab practicum, she corrected a teaching assistant who had transposed 2 datasets. The room fell silent. The TA smiled coolly. "Let's not show off." Later that week, her file was flagged for a behavioral review. Journee sat across from the assistant dean of students in a frosted glass office as he read notes aloud. Displays high confidence, at times disruptive to group learning, may benefit from social-emotional guidance. Journee blinked. I corrected a math error. He folded his hands. Tone matters here. That was the line. The one she would hear, in different forms, again and again. Tone matters. Not accuracy, not clarity, not proof. Tone. Logan Pierce arrived halfway through the first semester. His entrance was quiet, unlike his exit from the national stage after the contest scandal. The school held no press event, no announcement, but whispers followed him. His father had leveraged major donations to secure the spot. His record was sealed, his past erased. He walked the campus like someone returning to their rightful place. Students rallied around him, fascinated by his calm charm and clean slate. He was invited to speak in a symposium titled Redemption in the Age of Algorithms. He smiled for cameras and posed next to professors who had once condemned him. Journee was never invited to the same panels. When the student paper profiled her again, they didn't quote her. They quoted him. She's clearly intelligent, Logan said. But intelligence without consistency is dangerous. Journee read the line twice, then closed the tab. She didn't cry. She wrote a rebuttal. Clean, logical, powerful. The paper didn't publish it. Behind closed doors, she heard a professor refer to her presence on campus as a balancing act. We don't want to alienate donors. She passed every test, published 2 journal articles, led a breakthrough in algorithmic symmetry that earned her a mention in Wired magazine. But her inbox stayed full of vague check-ins. Her presence remained under review. Until one night, after a long coding session in the library, she returned to her dorm to find a folded note under her keyboard. Typed. No signature. It read, "They're not evaluating you. They're building a case. Everything you do is being documented. They're hoping for one misstep. Just one. Stay sharp." She looked around the room. Empty. Her heart pounded. Not from fear, but recognition. She'd been here before. Backstage. Outnumbered. Unwelcome. And just like then, she wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, her student portal wouldn't open. Her password had been changed, and a red banner appeared on her screen. Access suspended. Administrative review in progress. Journee sat in the university's tech support office for 40 minutes before anyone acknowledged her. She'd tried logging into her student portal that morning, like she always did, to check her assignment queues, review lab rosters, and download datasets. But instead of her dashboard, she was greeted by a screen that chilled her. Access suspended. Administrative review in progress. The IT intern behind the desk looked half asleep, sipping orange soda from a thermos. He didn't make eye contact as he muttered, "Yeah, these things happen sometimes. You must have triggered a protocol." "Which protocol?" she asked. He shrugged. "I just reset passwords." When her access finally returned 3 hours later, several of her files were missing. 2 professors had removed her from group project folders, citing workflow inconsistencies. No one contacted her directly. No explanation. No apology. But it didn't stop her. Journee doubled her efforts. She pulled 12-hour stints in the data lab. She coded clean, elegant solutions that ran 40% faster than anyone else's. She debugged her classmates' problems before the TAs arrived. She proposed a self-adaptive algorithm that 2 professors said could transform simulation modeling. The results were undeniable, so the system found a new way to punish her. Reputation. It began with feedback forms. In Bellwood's elite labs, students were required to submit evaluations of each group member after every team project. Journee's contributions were always substantial, building the entire structure, outlining documentation, testing code, and sometimes salvaging presentations that others botched. Still, her evaluations began to return with coded phrases. Too assertive during team meetings. Could learn to listen more. Made others feel inadequate by dominating problem solving. She asked her faculty advisor about them. He raised his eyebrows. Almost surprised she brought it up. "Well," he said, drawing the word out like an ellipsis. "Collaboration is as much about humility as talent, Journee. But I'm the one fixing their mistakes," she replied calmly. "That's not ego. That's contribution. Perception matters more than intention," he said flatly. Journee bit her tongue. It wasn't her tone that bothered them. It was that her brilliance didn't come with an apology. Other students, particularly the white male ones, shouted across labs, challenged professors mid-lecture, presented half-baked theories with full confidence, and were met with admiration. Visionaries, they were called. Bold minds. When Journee used the same tone even with proof in hand, she was labeled combative. In one quantum analysis class, she corrected a tenured professor's formula. Politely, quietly, after class. She showed the proof step by step on her tablet. The professor nodded, eyes thin. Impressive, he said, smiling. But that week, he published her as needs emotional maturity on her evaluation log. Then came the rumor. Someone had floated it anonymously on the campus Discord. She's brilliant but unstable. I heard she once threatened to walk out of a lecture because she wasn't allowed to present. The claim was false. Laughably so. But it didn't matter. It echoed. The more she corrected mistakes, the more defensive people became. Her name began to surface in conversations she wasn't invited to. When she entered a room, shoulders stiffened. Screens were minimized. One day in the cafeteria, she passed a group of her classmates. A few had once worked with her on a failed project. She heard one say, "There she is, Miss Know-It-All." Another added, "Can't wait until she flames out and blames racism again." Journee sat down with her tray. She didn't say a word. That night, she received an email from Student Affairs. "Several students have raised concerns regarding your communication style in group settings. We'd like to schedule a mediation." She reread it 3 times. Communication style. Mediation? She forwarded it to her academic counselor, requesting clarification. The reply came within minutes. "You've been flagged under our peer cohesion framework. It's best if we schedule a conversation." She showed up the next morning, only to be greeted not by a counselor, but a dean. Dean Carla Stearns, mid-50s. Crisp gray suit. Thin-rimmed glasses. Voice like static wrapped in velvet. "Journee," she said, extending a hand. "I've been meaning to speak with you." The meeting wasn't a conversation. It was a rebranding. "Bellwood is a competitive environment," Stearns began, folding her hands. "Many students here have exceptional capabilities, but what sets success apart isn't just intellect, it's adaptability." Journee listened silently. "We've noticed," the dean continued, "that your peers are struggling to feel safe contributing around you. Because I finish things they can't," she asked quietly. "Because they perceive your confidence as intimidating," Stearns corrected. Journee's voice didn't rise, but her hands tightened around the chair arms. "If I were a white boy from Connecticut," she said slowly, "you'd be calling that same confidence leadership." Stearns didn't flinch. "That's an unfair generalization," she said. "So is everything you're saying to me?" Stearns sighed, as if disappointed in a child. "No one's out to get you, Journee, but the environment is responding to how you show up." Journee stood. "I show up prepared. I show up better. That's what's threatening them." "Lower your profile," Stearns said, as she reached for a folder. "For your own safety." Journee stared. There it was. Not subtle. Not implied. Said outright. "Lower your profile, or face the consequences." 2 days later, a petition surfaced. It wasn't public, but it spread through group chats and private forums. A collection of signatures, mostly from first years, some from upperclassmen, claiming Journee's presence had created a destabilizing effect on cohort trust. Some comments were vague. "Makes others feel inadequate. Disrespects collaborative norms. Presents herself as morally superior." Others were cutting. "She's hostile. Always waiting to prove someone wrong. We feel anxious working with her." The petition never mentioned her race, but it didn't have to, because no one had launched a petition when Logan screamed at a TA for docking points. No one questioned collaboration when 3 white students refused to share code with an Asian classmate because she didn't vibe with the team. Journee emailed the Office of Equity and Inclusion. She received an auto-response. "Due to a high volume of cases, our current wait time is 4 to 6 weeks. Please ensure your concern is well documented and non-anonymous." Journee laughed, bitterly. They wanted her to document emotional theft. How do you record the weight of 1,000 sideways glances? How do you submit the erosion of your reputation by whispers and suggestion? That night, she sat in the silent commons of her dorm building. The lights flickered. The vending machine hummed. She scrolled through her own search results, still glowing with praise from a year ago. Interviews, articles, think pieces calling her the new face of educational equity. And yet here in the halls of power they were tearing that face apart. 1 pixel at a time. Just before midnight her email pinged. A private message. No sender name. Just a subject line. Read this. Tha. She opened it. A PDF attachment. The faint line. Carter risk profile. Intern. She clicked. And the first line sent a chill straight down her spine. Subject exhibits high intellectual capacity, but limited adaptability to institutional culture. Risk factors. Disruptive potential, social friction, narrative volatility. Narrative volatility. They weren't evaluating her. They were strategizing around her. And if this file existed, someone had written it. At the bottom of the file, in red ink, was a final line. Consider early dismissal, before external media escalates. Journee didn't sleep the night she received the leaked risk profile file. She sat at her desk in the dark, rereading the last sentence until the words blurred. Consider early dismissal, before external media escalates.
They weren't just watching her anymore.
They were planning her exit. Her brilliance wasn't enough. Her silence wasn't enough. Her documentation, her restraint, her self-control, none of it mattered. She wasn't being evaluated for performance. She was being managed like a threat. At 4:03 a.m., she closed the file and backed it up twice, once to a locked flash drive and again to a secure encrypted cloud account she'd created after the math contest. Just in case. Because if there was one thing the past year had taught her, it was this. When the system wants you gone, proof is your only heir. She showed up to class that morning, in a black turtleneck and navy slacks. No hoodie, no headphones. She kept her expression still, her bag packed tightly. She said nothing during lectures, even when she knew the equations were wrong. Let them feel her silence. Let it echo. But that afternoon, the silence was shattered. She returned to her dorm suite, around 3:00 p.m. Slipped under her door was a folded piece of paper, no envelope, no label, just resting there, like a trap. She stared at it before touching it. Every instinct told her, don't look, just report it. But she knew how that would be received. She picked it up, unfolded it slowly, and froze. The paper showed a hand-drawn cartoon, a caricature of a black girl, with wide lips, big eyes, an oversized afro, and a speech bubble that read, I'm not aggressive. I'm just smarter than you, massa. Drawn in red ink. Sloppy but deliberate. Underneath, in the corner, someone had written, You're not the only one who can make profiles. Her fingers trembled. She scanned the hallway. No one. No cameras in this part of the dorm wing. The door lock logs were private. Her room had no cameras. Not even Bellwood's obsessive surveillance reached this far. The message was clear. She had no safe space. And worse, whoever had done it knew the language of institutional violence. This wasn't a crude slur. It was coded. Smirking. Strategic. They were mocking her for reporting the risk profile. And daring her to react. She called campus security. A male officer arrived 20 minutes later. Middle-aged, bored. Already writing on his clipboard before she spoke. She showed him the paper. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he chuckled once. Looks like someone's got a sick sense of humor. Her mouth tightened. This isn't humor. He shrugged. Could have been a prank. You're kind of famous here. Students do dumb things. It's a racial threat, she said, with knowledge of an internal file that wasn't public. He whistled. Okay, now that's conspiracy talk. Let's not escalate. You're not under threat. It's just a drawing. She stared. If I were white and someone left a threat referencing a manifesto, would you call it just a drawing? He didn't answer. Instead, he took a photo with his phone and handed the cartoon back to her. We'll make a note of it. But unless there's damage or injury, it's not a code violation. Shouldn't you log it as a bias incident? I'll file it under student conflict, he said, already walking away. Sometimes silence is the best defense. That evening, Journee received an email from Campus Wellness. Subject: mental health outreach. Dear Journee, we've been notified that you may be experiencing high emotional distress. We'd like to schedule a consultation with our behavior response team for your well-being. Please respond within 48 hours to avoid escalation. Escalation? She slammed her laptop shut. They didn't investigate the hate. They investigated her reaction to it. Reporting racism at Bellwood wasn't just discouraged, it was pathologized. Suddenly, she was the concern. The next morning, she showed up to her systems architecture class early. As she pulled out her laptop, she noticed two students whispering, watching her from the back. One girl turned her screen toward her friend and smirked. Journee narrowed her eyes. After class, one of the TAs approached her near the vending machines. Hey, he said gently. I don't want to overstep, but a few students mentioned you've been acting tense lately. You okay? She laughed under her breath. Bitter short. I'm fine. You might want to lay low, he added. I've seen them turn on people fast here. Doesn't matter who's right. She didn't respond. She just walked away. But that evening, things crossed a line. She returned to her lab to finalize her capstone project, a semester-long architecture simulation that accounted for AI biases in real-time data distribution. It was the most ambitious work she'd ever done, layered, sharp, and weeks ahead of schedule. She entered her locker code. Nothing. She tried again. Access denied. Her thumbprint was rejected. She called the lab manager, a senior student named Ross. Oh, he said, sounding surprised. Didn't you request a locker reset?
What?
I got an email from your account. Said you wanted to swap lockers because of a security concern. I never sent that. A pause. Then you should probably come here. She sprinted across campus. When she arrived, Ross stood beside her locker, now open, contents missing, all her backup drives, her binder, her code sheets. Gone. Check the cloud, he said quickly. Maybe your files are... She was already typing. Her screen lit up. Access denied. Her primary capstone file had been deleted. She tried her secondary drive. Corrupted. She ran a recovery program, hands shaking. One corrupted file fragment loaded just one line of code. It had been renamed Genius Girl. Silenced. Her chest burned. Not from panic, from clarity. This wasn't a prank. This was strategy. Whoever had done this knew her access points, knew her process, knew how to make it look like an accident, while sending a message no one else would hear. She called it.
They promised to look into it.
She emailed her professor. No reply. She walked back to her dorm in silence. The air was cold. The path lights flickered. A bike rolled by in the distance. And then her phone buzzed. A new email. No subject. No name. Just an attachment. Carter Project backdoor. She hesitated.
Then opened it.
Inside was a single sentence. Don't report this. You were warned once. Next time, it won't just be code that gets deleted. Her phone screen glitched, and a video began to autoplay. Security footage. From inside her dorm. Someone had recorded her sleeping. Journee didn't sleep after the video played. Her hands had trembled as she hit pause. Her own frozen image still on the screen. Face relaxed, breath even. Asleep under the dim light of her dorm desk lamp. The camera angle was too high to be from a phone, too still to be handheld. The grainy infrared hue confirmed it. A security camera feed. Except she didn't have a camera in her room. The implication crushed her lungs like gravity. Someone from the inside had tapped into the surveillance network, or worse, installed a device inside her room. Her sanctuary was compromised. Her safety wasn't just at risk, it had been studied. But instead of reporting it, she went silent. Because Journee Carter was learning. Not just theorems, simulations, or code. She was learning how racism updated itself in elite spaces. This wasn't screaming in the hallways. It was silent sabotage. Digital fingerprints without prints. Bias disguised as bureaucratic process. Her complaints weren't denied. They were diluted, deferred, and finally, dismissed. She no longer trusted campus security. She no longer emailed professors without triple encryption. Every tab she opened, every drive she saved, she assumed someone was watching. And that week, her fears were confirmed again, not by a threat but by theft. It happened during a student research colloquium. An upperclassman named Damon Vega, senior in the Department of Predictive Systems, presented his capstone project in a standing room only forum. Journee went because it was required. She took her usual seat, near the back, away from the praise-clapping first-year echo chamber. As Damon's slideshow began, her heart slowly began to pound. Slide after slide, line after line, code structures, feedback models, language mirroring, variable sets. It was hers.
Not inspired by.
Not vaguely similar. Identical. His project, hailed as innovative, disruptive, generational, was her exact model. The one she'd written in isolation during winter break, coded into private files, backed up under encrypted tags. She sat still, her hands gripping the armrests. The audience clapped. Professors nodded in reverence. Damon's final slide read, "The future is predictable, if you control the inputs." Journee almost laughed. The irony stung more than the theft. She left before the Q&A ended. The next morning, she dug deep, opened every version of her original files, tracked timestamps, combed through metadata, and then she found it. In a duplicate cloud archive she rarely touched, just a backup of a backup, she discovered something that froze her breath. One of her source files had been accessed remotely, from a Bellwood administrative server, timestamped 2 weeks before Damon submitted his proposal. Faculty-level credentials. She ran a forensic log trace using a script she'd written herself, one that monitored ghost entries not visible through standard cloud dashboards. It revealed something worse. 4 other files, iterations of her core theory, had been pinged by 2 separate faculty IP addresses. Journee stared at the screen, rage and clarity converging. They hadn't just let her work be stolen. They'd delivered it. For the rest of the day, she barely spoke. She printed her documentation, highlighted the access logs, and compiled it into a professional brief. Neat, neutral, undeniable. The paper was titled, Unauthorized Access of Proprietary Research. Preliminary Evidence and Metadata Breakdown. She slid it under the door of Dean Stern's office and sent a digital copy through Bellwood's official complaint portal. Within 3 hours, her inbox pinged. Thank you, Journee. We take allegations of intellectual misattribution seriously. Please refrain from discussing this with other students while we conduct a confidential resolution process. Confidential. She'd seen that word used before, when they wanted quiet consequences for loud violations. But this time, she wasn't waiting. She reached out to her former mentor from the National Youth Coding League, a woman named Dr. Celine Park, who now taught at MIT. She sent her the brief, the stolen lines of code, the algorithm traces. Dr. Park called her within the hour. Journee, she said slowly. This is massive. But if Bellwood finds out you're sharing internal logs, I'm not under contract, she said, and I'm not staying silent. You realize what this means, right? Dr. Park added. This isn't just theft. It's protection of someone else's career at the cost of yours. Journee didn't blink. I know. That week, nothing happened. No follow-up email. No acknowledgement. Damon's project went on to be nominated for the Bellwood Innovation Medal. His face was featured in the alumni magazine. Professors lined up to endorse him. Journee waited. Then on Friday afternoon, just before her AI systems class, her ID card stopped working at the lab entrance. She scanned again. Access revoked. Contact systems admin. Confused, she tried her login at the central kiosk. Locked. She sprinted across campus to the academic support building, straight to the office of Professor Reinhardt, her capstone advisor. He looked up as she entered. Oh, he said, blinking. I was told you wouldn't be returning to the lab this semester. Who told you that? He paused, clearly choosing his words. There's been a review, it's above me. You've been temporarily removed from research access pending some internal process, but no one informed me. Sometimes decisions are communicated centrally, he said, averting his gaze. Journee felt her skin go cold. You're punishing me for filing a complaint. No one is punishing you, he said quickly. These are standard procedures during investigations. She laughed once, sharp and dry. So the person who had her work stolen gets suspended, and the thief gets an award. He didn't respond. She stepped closer. Tell me something, she said, voice tight. If I were white, if I came from money, if I smiled more and spoke less, would you still be calling this procedure? Reinhardt finally looked at her. Journee, he said softly. You don't understand how this place works. I do now, she replied. Perfectly. She left the building, wind slicing through her coat. The system didn't want her to succeed. It wanted her to surrender. And it had just made a fatal mistake. It underestimated how well she could read patterns. That night she opened a new folder on her hard drive. She titled it, They Think I'm Alone, and she began writing. Not code, but something else. Something louder. Something permanent. The next morning, she woke to 47 unread emails, all from anonymous faculty accounts. The subject line on every single one, delete your folder, or we delete your future. The inbox count ticked upward before dawn. 47 emails, identical in structure, faceless in tone. Subject, delete your folder, or we delete your future. No names, no signatures, no IP trails that basic tracing could follow. But Journee knew exactly what they meant. Her private documentation, the folder labeled They Think I'm Alone, had become a threat, proof, pattern recognition, system logs, security anomalies, all of it lined up. She hadn't leaked it yet. She hadn't gone public. But the mere existence of her truth, that was already dangerous. Journee didn't delete it. She backed it up 5 times. By 9:12 a.m., she received her next blow, one that didn't come in the form of a threat but a spreadsheet. Subject: Urgent Bellwood Scholarship Fund Status Update. Dear Ms. Carter, in accordance with annual financial audits, your full-ride scholarship is currently under administrative review. During this time, disbursements may be paused. Please refrain from making housing or tuition payments until your file has been cleared. She read the email twice, then a third time. Administrative review. Pause disbursements. No notice, no prior warning, no other students included in the supposed audit. She opened her student portal. A blinking red alert greeted her. Funding status on hold. Her heart dropped. Not from fear, from fury. Journee Carter didn't come from wealth. Her scholarship covered everything: tuition, room, board, lab access, even travel stipends. If they revoked it, even temporarily, she would be forced out within days. But that wasn't the part that stung most. It was the timing. Because 2 days earlier, Bellwood's Instagram page had posted a glossy photo of Logan Pierce on stage at a national tech summit. The caption read, "Our own Logan Pierce, 26, shares his journey from adversity to innovation at the Future Minds Conference in DC. Now the youngest recipient of our Emerging Visionary Fellowship. Proud to see him rise." Journee stared at the image.
Adversity?
He was the one who humiliated her on national television. The one who benefited from a rigged contest. The one whose silence allowed her name to be dragged through media mud, while he rebuilt himself quietly in the shadows. And now, he was being paid to speak. Celebrated for surviving a story he helped create. She zoomed in on the picture. In his left hand, a Bellwood Fellowship plaque. In his right, a microphone. Smile flawless, sleeves rolled up like a model visionary. Journee clicked out of the post and pulled up her financial profile again. Still red, still on hold, still under review. She called the Office of Financial Aid. A woman answered with a dry, clipped voice. Name: Journee Carter. A pause. The sound of keys typing. "Oh," the woman said, her tone shifting slightly. Not warmer, just more aware. "You're flagged."
Why?
"I don't have that information." "Who does?" "Administrative services." "Can I speak to them?" "No direct line. You'll be contacted if clarification is required." Journee hung up. Her jaw clenched. That evening, she received a notice from Housing and Residential Life. Your spring semester housing contract is now contingent on verified scholarship status. Please note that hold status may delay access to meal plans and dorm renewals. They were tightening the circle, suffocating her with red tape, and masking it as standard procedure. But Journee wasn't alone. Not anymore. Later that night, a name popped up in her inbox she didn't expect. Ava Moreland, a former Bellwood alumna and major donor. The subject line was blank. The message was short. "They've done this before. Not publicly. Not with anyone as visible as you. But don't let them dress this up as procedure. You've embarrassed too many people who are used to being untouchable. They're looking for a clean way to push you out. If you need proof, ask how many other scholarship recipients were flagged. The number is 0. Journee stared at the email. This wasn't theory. This was confirmation. She typed back. "Why are you helping me?" A reply came 2 minutes later. "Because I was you. Until I stopped asking permission to exist." The next day, Journee walked into the administrative building, wearing a black turtleneck and gray blazer, her hair braided down her back, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She requested a meeting with Dean Stern. She waited in the lobby for 38 minutes. Then an assistant emerged. "I'm sorry, but Dean Stearns isn't available." "Is she declining to meet with me?" Journee asked calmly. "She's occupied with institutional priorities." Journee smiled. "Make sure she knows that I'm one of them." She left without another word. But before she reached the sidewalk, her phone buzzed again. Another internal alert. Student file status. Non-compliant. Due to inconsistencies between documented financial need and academic resource usage, your file has been flagged for escalation. Please await a formal review panel. Inconsistencies. Journee had reported every book, every tablet, every lab hour. Her documentation was airtight, and yet somehow, she was non-compliant. Not the student who stole her research. Not the one who mocked her online. Not the white boy being flown around the country for fellowships built on revisionist storytelling. Her. The black girl who wouldn't shrink. The system didn't want her brilliance. It wanted her silence. The next morning, her ID card failed at every scanner on campus, including her dorm. Her access had been completely revoked. No explanation. No warning. Just erasure in real time. Journee Carter stood outside the locked glass doors of her dorm. ID card in hand. Chest rising slow but heavy. She scanned again. Access denied. A message blinked beneath it. See administrator. She didn't panic. Not outwardly. But every muscle in her jaw stayed clenched. The card hadn't stopped working by mistake. It was deliberate and calculated. A system that moved in silence now wanted to humiliate her in public. But Journee didn't beg. She walked straight to the student services office, demanded written clarification, and then, before they could dodge behind policy, walked back out into the cold with her phone already recording. She posted the footage with no caption. By the time she crossed the quad, it had 11 by midnight. But viral wasn't vindication. Not anymore. Because Bellwood had decided she wasn't just a problem. She was a liability. And nothing made that clearer than what happened next. 3 weeks earlier, before the dorm lockout, before the financial flagging, Journee had quietly begun working on something personal. She'd called it Math Equicode, a free open-source math curriculum for underserved public schools. The project combined logic training with real-world problem-solving, designed specifically for students who'd been labeled slow or behind. She knew what that label did to kids who looked like her, how early it started, how internal it became. So she wanted to give them tools, not just to learn, but to see themselves as brilliant, not exceptional, not tokens, just normal black kids, doing extraordinary math. She reached out to teachers across the country, Detroit, Atlanta, Fresno, Milwaukee, and got quiet interest. Some agreed to pilot the modules after hours. Others added the worksheets to morning warm-ups. The program grew. Journee posted a quiet announcement on her portfolio site. If you've ever felt like math wasn't built for you, this is your invitation. No tests, no gatekeepers, just curiosity. She didn't make it political. But politics came for her anyway. Because 2 weeks into the pilot rollout, a conservative blog ran the headline, "Contest Girl Pushes Woke Math on Poor Kids." The story cherry-picked one lesson, a module comparing historical redlining patterns to statistical modeling, and twisted it as Marxist indoctrination. Another outlet followed, "Racial justice meets algebra? This is what they want. In schools now." Then came the avalanche. YouTube pundits calling her a CRT plant. Parents flooding school boards, demanding answers. Her inbox lit up with subject lines like,
"You're brainwashing children."
"This isn't your plantation. We know where you live." "Scholarship girl." Journee tried to ignore it, but then Bellwood made its move. The university issued a formal press statement. "We were not made aware of any external partnerships with Ms. Carter's project, and are not affiliated with the curriculum in question. While we encourage innovation, we also expect students to operate within institutional guidelines." Journee read it twice. They hadn't just distanced themselves. They'd erased their support entirely, despite having approved her independent research credit tied to Math Equicode months prior. A reporter called the next day asking for comment. She declined. She knew better than to step into a media storm without a seat at the table. But Bellwood didn't stop there. The Office of Academic Conduct opened a review of off-campus activity, citing potential reputational harm for helping children. Journee sat in a closed-door hearing with 2 administrators and 1 legal representative. They asked her if she had solicited minors without district approval, if she had distributed unvetted content, if she had represented herself as a Bellwood employee. She answered each question carefully. "I worked with licensed teachers under pilot agreements. I shared open-source content, not personal data. I never claimed Bellwood affiliation. My name is my name, but none of it mattered." The goal wasn't resolution. It was pressure. To quit. To fold. To disappear. When she left the meeting, her shoulders tight, her phone buzzed again.
This time, it was national.
A verified political commentator had tweeted, "Journee Carter was the math girl. Now she's the woke girl." Isn't it funny how fast brilliance turns to activism when scholarships are on the line? The replies were vicious. Another angry black girl using race as a career. She should have stayed in her lane. She's not smart. She's strategic. Big difference. She wanted to scream. Not for herself, but for every kid who might have been inspired by Math Equicode. Because now, if they searched it, they wouldn't find worksheets. They'd find headlines. But the most devastating blow didn't come from a pundit. It came from Capitol Hill. 3 days after the press storm peaked, a senator from the Education Oversight Committee, one known for launching televised hearings, posted a video. He stood before a row of flags, voice solemn. "We've received credible concerns that a student-initiated math curriculum is secretly promoting racial politics in public schools. I've instructed my office to begin a formal inquiry into possible political grooming of minors under the guise of STEM education." Political grooming. Journee froze. She'd heard the term before, used to weaponize parental fear, to smear LGBTQ teachers, to dismantle equity programs. Now it was being pointed at her. A 19-year-old student, a math prodigy, a black girl who had done nothing but give. And suddenly, she was being treated like a national threat. That evening, the school cut her server access, and campus police showed up at her dorm with a warning. "Cease all external communication until your review is complete." The night air outside Bellwood carried that sharp winter silence, the kind that makes every sound echo. Journee Carter sat alone in the dorm common room, a cupcake on the table in front of her. A single candle flickered weakly, its light barely pushing through the sterile glow of the fluorescent ceiling lamps. 16. She'd thought birthdays would feel lighter by now, that she'd earned a little peace after surviving the storm. But all she felt was distance, between herself and the world, between what people thought she was and who she was becoming. Her phone buzzed. It was a video call from her mother, still in Atlanta. Her voice came through choppy, tired but warm. 16, huh? Look at you. My baby's a whole world changer, and still sitting in a hoodie like it's 7th grade. Journee smiled faintly. It's warmer this way. Her mother's eyes softened. You holding up? Journee hesitated, trying to. She didn't tell her about the media attacks, or the threats, or the way Bellwood security had knocked on her door 2 nights earlier to remind her to stay quiet about the federal inquiry into math eco code. Her mother already worried too much. They talked a few more minutes. Birthdays, scholarships, maybe visiting home after midterms. Then the call ended. Journee sat back, listening to the quiet hum of the building's heating system. It was 10:47 p.m. when the envelope slid under her door. No stamp, no address, just her name printed in black ink. She picked it up carefully, almost expecting it to burn. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was deliberate, blocky, like someone wanted to make sure it couldn't be traced to a particular hand. Stay in your place, little genius, or you won't make it to 17. Journee froze. The words didn't shock her, they exhausted her. Threats had become background noise lately. The anonymous emails, the coded tweets, the fake concerned parent letters. But this felt different. This wasn't digital hate. This was physical proximity. Someone had been here. Someone had touched her door, her floor. Someone had crossed the invisible line between public hatred and personal danger. She folded the letter back up, slid it into a plastic sleeve, and walked straight to the security office. The night officer, a broad-shouldered man with a fading badge, looked up as she entered. "Something I can help you with." "I got this under my door," she said. Her voice didn't waver. She'd learned long ago that fear gave them excuses to patronize you. He took the paper, glanced at it once, and leaned back in his chair. "Could be a prank," he said. "It's a death threat, or a bad joke. Someone entered my dorm floor." He exhaled, annoyed. "Look, Miss Carter, we'll make a note, but unless there's a name or video evidence, there's not much we can do. People get weird online." "This wasn't online," she said, sharper now. "This was under my door." He shrugged. "Then maybe talk to housing about hall access logs. But don't go stirring panic, all right? We don't want this turning into a spectacle." A spectacle. That's all they ever saw her as. A walking controversy. When she left, he didn't even keep the paper. He handed it back like a receipt. The next morning, an email waited for her. Subject: Student Wellness Check. Dear Journee, we've been informed that you may be experiencing anxiety related to online harassment. Please schedule an appointment with our counseling department. In the meantime, refrain from posting or discussing unverified threats. We don't want misinformation spreading. Unverified. She reread that word, until her eyes blurred. They weren't protecting her. They were protecting the brand. By noon, her upcoming speaking tour, 4 high school visits and a STEM conference, was officially postponed for safety reasons. Journee sat in her dorm stairwell, the walls vibrating faintly with the distant hum of campus machinery. Her phone lay in her lap, screen dark. It wasn't fear she felt now. It was erasure, that slow, suffocating silence that followed every time she spoke up. When she was brilliant, they called her arrogant. When she was brave, they called her reckless. When she was threatened, they called her dramatic. She thought about deleting her social media, maybe disappearing for a while. But then she remembered the faces from her math equi-code sessions, the little kids in Chicago, in Oakland, in Birmingham, who'd written her handwritten notes saying, "You made me believe I can do this too." And she couldn't disappear. Not for them. Not for herself. That evening, she went live for the first time in weeks. No script. No sponsor. No Bellwood approval. Her voice was calm, steady, stripped of performance. "I turned 16 today," she began, "and I got a letter telling me not to make it to 17. But I'm not scared of people who hide behind ink and policy. I'm scared of silence, because silence is where this kind of hate grows." She looked straight into the camera. "I'm still here, still coding, still teaching, still existing where I'm not supposed to." The video spread fast. 500,000 views in hours. Support messages poured in from teachers, students, activists, journalists. But so did the hate. The next morning, Bellwood's public relations office sent her an email. "Your live stream has generated significant attention, both positive and negative. We advise removing it immediately, to avoid escalation. Remember, your actions reflect on the institution." She didn't delete it. And that's when the escalation came. At 3:26 p.m., her phone buzzed again. Private number. No message body. Just an image. A photo of her dorm door. Taken from the outside. Zoomed close enough that the scuff marks near the hinge were visible. And written under it, in the caption line, "Happy sweet 16, little genius." Journee's breath caught. She looked around. The corridor empty. The windows glared with winter light. For a moment everything felt suspended. Time, gravity, safety. She called campus police again. This time, they told her not to amplify the incident publicly. "Why not?" she demanded. "You want me quiet until I end up on a news headline?" The officer's tone was almost sympathetic. "You don't understand how exposure works, Miss Carter. The more you engage, the more attention you attract. You need to protect yourself." "No," she said quietly. "You need to protect me." He didn't answer. By nightfall, she sat in her dark dorm room. Curtains drawn, laptop open, the glow painting her face in faint blue. Outside, snow began to fall. Quiet, cold, erasing everything in its path. Inside, Journee typed a single line into a blank document. "If something happens to me, let this be the record that I saw it coming." She hit save. And just before the lights flickered, a campus-wide alert flashed on her phone. "Anonymous social post detected near Bellwood dormitory perimeter." She clicked the link. It led to an unverified account. And there it was again. Her dorm photo. Posted publicly. Viewed 82,000 times. Captioned with one new line. "Tick-tock." The account tagged Bellwood's official page. And within minutes her name started trending under Bellwood Threat Girl. The hashtag Bellwood Threat Girl trended for 3 straight days. It was never meant to trend. It was meant to label her. Package her into something easier to dismiss. Not a victim. Not a student. Not even a target. Just a distraction. A disruption. A headline. Journee Carter didn't respond. She didn't post. Didn't stream. Didn't debate pundits or release another video. She just watched as the narrative bloomed without her. Pundits speculating about her mental stability, school officials offering bland denials, and influencers demanding she tone it down. But the silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Because 3 weeks earlier, before the hashtag, before the lockouts, before the letter, Journee had been invited to speak at the National Future of Education Summit in Washington, D.C. It was one of the most prestigious platforms a student could be offered. Past speakers included senators, Nobel laureates, tech billionaires. She'd been the first black high schooler invited in the summit's history. The invitation had arrived with fanfare. Private travel, hotel booking, a glowing public announcement. Journee Carter to keynote. "The future of math belongs to everyone." But that was before the political storm, before the CRT accusations, before a senator had called her curriculum indoctrination disguised as education. So now, as the noise built online, another email landed in her inbox. Subject: Speaking engagement. Change of program. "Dear Journee, we regret to inform you that due to rising security concerns and political sensitivities, your scheduled keynote at the National Future of Education Summit will be postponed. We appreciate your understanding as we ensure a balanced, non-divisive dialogue at this year's event. Balanced. Journee read the word 3 times. They weren't worried about security. They were worried about optics. They didn't want the world seeing a black girl speak truth in front of power, because that made power uncomfortable. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened the document she'd spent weeks perfecting. Her keynote speech. It was titled simply, "This is what genius looks like too," and she uploaded it to her personal blog. No press release, no viral caption. Just the transcript. Quiet, raw, full of fire. She spoke not about race, but about resilience. About how too many kids are told they're not advanced enough when really they just weren't invited early enough. About how genius isn't inherited. It's grown, watered, and seen. And about how institutions fear brilliance when it doesn't look like them, because then they can't control it. One paragraph read, "We say math is universal. But the truth is, access to math is political. Because what we don't teach is who we don't expect to rise. And when students like me rise anyway, we're called a threat. But I'm not dangerous. I'm just undeniable." She posted it at 10:12 a.m. By 2:34 p.m., the speech had been shared by Ava DuVernay, Kerry Washington, and half the education reform community on Twitter. By midnight it had 2.3 million views. Celebrities reposted it. Advocacy groups printed it. Young girls read it aloud in classrooms and uploaded the videos. Even major media outlets that had once ignored her now ran op-eds asking, "Why are we silencing this voice?" Bellwood said nothing. The summit organizers issued a vague statement about evolving agendas, but the backlash had started turning. Journee Carter was no longer a target. She was becoming a symbol. And symbols are dangerous. The very next morning, 3 governors in Florida, Texas, and Tennessee announced a ban on the Math Code curriculum from public schools statewide. Their joint press release claimed the program was laced with ideological bias and designed to undermine patriotic education principles. Journee stared at the screen in disbelief. They hadn't just banned her worksheets. They'd banned hope. In one stroke, they erased access to free adaptive math lessons for over 180,000 underserved students. No debate, no hearing, just erasure. She sat in the window of the library that night, watching students laugh below her. Her laptop lay open on her knees, the governor's press conference still playing, their words looping over and over. "We will not let fringe ideologues infiltrate our schools through backdoor activism. Math should teach facts, not feelings. If she wants to be political, let her do it without our schools." But all she'd wanted to do was teach, to build a path she never had. And now her name was banned in classrooms she'd never even visited. She was 6, and she was being written out of the future she helped design. She received text from teachers, apologizing, from students, confused and scared. "Does this mean we can't use the lessons anymore? Will we get in trouble for saying your name?" And the one that broke her. "I thought we mattered." Journee closed her laptop, eyes glassy. She didn't cry. She couldn't afford to. Instead, she opened her notebook and wrote one line. "When they fear your voice, make it louder." Then she turned on her phone camera. She was going live again. But this time, it wouldn't be a speech. It would be a call to action. Right as she was about to hit go live, her phone froze, and then rebooted with a new banner. "Device disabled by institutional override." Bellwood had taken control of her tech. Journee's screen went black. No warning, no lag, no low battery alert, just darkness. Like the device itself had decided she didn't deserve connection. She held the phone in her hands, watching the reflection of her own face fade in the glass. "Device disabled by institutional override." Bellwood's security watermark glowed faintly in the corner of the blank screen. The same one they used when remotely locking faculty tablets. Her phone wasn't school-issued, but they'd hacked it anyway. Her pulse quickened, not from surprise, but from recognition. This was the same pattern. Control, denial, containment. They couldn't stop her ideas, so they were cutting her voice. She didn't panic. She powered on her old laptop, tethered a private VPN, and uploaded her saved keynote speech again, this time mirrored on servers outside the US. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. She didn't blink, didn't hesitate. When the system starts censoring you, your survival becomes a skill set. But while her files uploaded, something worse began brewing. Beyond the campus, beyond even Bellwood. It started on national television. A popular evening talk show, The Real Conversation with Nathan Cole, aired a special investigation titled, "The Myth of the Math Prodigy. Did Journee Carter Cheat the Contest?" The host smiled as graphics flashed behind him, a collage of headlines, Journee's viral clips, and the words "allegations of fraud" in bold red letters. Nathan Cole began smoothly, his voice dripping with practiced neutrality. "She's been celebrated as the future of STEM. But what if the story we've been told about this young girl's genius isn't entirely true?" Journee watched from her laptop, frozen in disbelief. The studio audience murmured as the segment continued. A guest appeared on screen. Elliot Brandt, former president of the National Youth Math Board. A man Journee remembered vividly. Tailored suits, dismissive eyes, the one who'd shaken her hand after the contest ended, and whispered, "Don't let the attention get to your head." Now he was on TV, smirking beneath stage lights. "I always believed the results were unusually convenient," he said. "We reviewed her data logs later and found discrepancies, timestamps that don't align. It raised questions about whether she solved the problem independently or had access to restricted material." "Are you suggesting she cheated?" the host pressed. Brandt raised his hands in mock caution. "I'm suggesting the possibility was never fully investigated." The clip cut to archived footage of Journee at 12, standing nervously at the contest podium, a child surrounded by adults twice her height. Then it cut back to the host's solemn face. If true, this would not only challenge her credibility, but also the schools and sponsors who used her as a symbol of diversity success. Journee's stomach turned. The framing was perfect. Polished. Poisonous, devastating. By morning it was everywhere. Carter cheat began trending. Commentators debated it, like it was a sport. Maybe she was coached. Nobody that age figures out that equation alone. This is why merit should matter, not media. Her email flooded again. This time, not just with hate, but pity. Phrases like "it's sad she had to lie to make it." And worse, another fraud hiding behind race. Bellwood issued a statement, carefully worded, antiseptic. "The institution stands by its commitment to integrity and fair inquiry. At this time, we are not in a position to comment on Miss Carter's past competitions." They didn't defend her, they distanced her. By evening, she sat alone in the empty computer lab, staring at a loop of her own face on news segments. The same smile that once represented pride, now edited to look smug. The same speech now spliced with commentary, implying arrogance. She tried calling her mother. The call dropped mid-sentence. She tried emailing Dr. Park. Server blocked. She tried opening her blog. Access denied. It was happening again. The same silent machinery that crushed truth with professionalism. Journee leaned forward, her voice breaking for the first time in months. "Why do they hate what they can't explain?" she whispered to no one. Then, 3 days later, it happened. A leak. Anonymous. Untunnel. Attached to a Reddit post under a throwaway username. Truth Matters. The file name read, "Carter Incident. Internal meeting audio." It was a 2-hour recording. Timestamp 1 week before the National Math Contest had aired. Location: National Youth Math Board Conference Room. Participants: senior board members. Sponsors: Brandt. The voices were muffled but clear enough. "If she wins, it'll look staged. We can't pull her score outright. That's too obvious. Then adjust the scoring matrix. Give Logan the spotlight. Quietly. She'll never know. She's 12. Journee froze. The next voice, one she recognized. Brandt again. "We need to control the narrative. If she pushes back, she'll look like an angry kid playing the race card. Public perception will do the rest." The recording ended with laughter, someone clapping, and a final clear sentence. "Carter's a threat to our narrative." Journee's hands trembled as she replayed that line. The file spread like wildfire. Within hours, the hashtags flipped. Carter cheat became Carter setup. News anchors scrambled to issue clarifications. Nathan Cole released a lukewarm apology. "We were misled by inaccurate sources." Brandt's office shut down its social media. The National Youth Math Board's website went offline. But the damage, the years of quiet humiliation, the institutional disbelief, the stolen peace, couldn't be undone by trending sympathy. Journee watched the chaos unfold, not with triumph, but exhaustion. Because even in vindication, they still framed her as a controversy. Not a victim, not a survivor, just a headline again. A teacher from Atlanta messaged her late that night. "They can't erase you anymore, Journee. The truth is out." She wanted to believe that. But she knew the truth didn't end oppression. It just made it harder to deny. And she had proof of that too. Because 1 hour after the leak, her Bellwood portal blinked back to life. But her access wasn't restored. It was replaced by a single file in her inbox. No subject. No name. Just a voice recording. It was the Dean, Stearns. Her tone low, almost conspiratorial. We're aware of the recording. We need you to understand something, Journee. This changes nothing here. What happened before you arrived is not our jurisdiction. Focus on your studies. Don't make this another spectacle. Journee stared at the file. Her chest rose once. Sharply, she closed her laptop without replying. They could bury the evidence. They could disown the narrative. But they couldn't stop what had already begun. Because now, for the first time, the entire country knew the truth she'd carried alone for years. The next morning, a new message appeared on her phone, from an unknown number. It contained a single sentence. They know who leaked it, and they think it was you. The morning after the whistleblower leak, Journee Carter's inbox overflowed. This time, not with hate, but with headlines. Carter was right. National contest rigged against black student. Board president implicated in scoring scandal. For the first time in 2 years, the world didn't just believe Journee. They knew. But not everyone was ready to face that truth.
Bellwood remained silent.
The National Youth Math Board deleted its statement archives. Logan Pierce issued a carefully worded post. I was not involved in scoring decisions and respect all contestants. Journee didn't respond. She didn't need to anymore. The story was out, and someone else had picked it up. 2 days later, a team of civil rights attorneys from Washington, D.C., the same ones who'd challenged Ivy League admission discrimination and police surveillance in black schools, filed a federal class action lawsuit against the Bellwood Institute, the National Youth Math Board, and 3 affiliated academic oversight bodies. At the top of the 56-page brief, Carter v. National Youth Math Board et al. This is a case about institutional silencing, about a system that could not bear the sight of uncontainable black excellence, and chose instead to discredit, isolate, and erase it. Journee's name was front and center, not as a victim, as a plaintiff, as a trigger for change. The suit was more than her personal story. It was built on a pattern. 7 other black students from 7 elite math academies had come forward under anonymity, each with eerily similar experiences. Blocked research approvals, redlined funding files, disappearing scholarships, attitude flags in faculty notes. Journee read the affidavit in silence, each page layering pain she recognized, pain she had once thought was hers alone. Her legal team requested access to Bellwood's internal communications, and a federal judge approved the subpoena within 72 hours. The floodgates opened. What came next shook even the most cynical observers. Hundreds of emails, dozens of internal memos, redacted faculty meeting minutes. All of them painted the same picture. A system that hadn't merely failed to protect its most gifted black student, but had actively coordinated to contain her. One message from the admissions director read, Carter's a brand risk. Genius. Sure. But volatile. She won't play the game the way we need her to. Another from a faculty advisor. Keep her close, but keep her controlled. She's got a chip on her shoulder and too much visibility. Make sure she doesn't hijack our equity messaging. And in one damning exchange, sent just weeks before her scholarship was audited, 2 senior staffers debated revoking her dorm privileges. Pull her funding and she'll either fall in line or transfer out quietly. Fine, but make it look procedural. We can't afford another social media circus. Journee read that line twice. Another social media circus. That was how they saw her. Not a student. Not a human. A problem to be managed. When the press got hold of the documents, the backlash exploded. Major news networks ran primetime specials. Journalists unearthed more. Whistleblowers. Internal faculty turnover. Even past attempts to bury discrimination complaints. Bellwood scrambled to do damage control. The president issued a public apology, vaguely worded and 2 weeks too late. We recognize that some actions may have unintentionally contributed to a sense of exclusion among students. We are reviewing our policies. Journee didn't flinch. She knew that language. May have, unintentionally. Reviewing. It was the lexicon of evasion. The lawsuit didn't flinch either. As the case gathered steam, the U.S. Department of Education launched its own investigation. Then came the call. Journee sat on the floor of her dorm, which she still wasn't sure would be hers by semester's end, When her lawyer Deja Morrow called her directly, her voice was sharper than usual. "We need to talk," she said. "You're going to want to sit down for this." Journee steadied her breath. "What happened?" "The Diaz office just sent over a statement," Deja replied. "It's confidential for now, but they've reviewed the subpoenaed materials, and they're recommending escalation." Journee's heart stuttered.
Escalation how?
There was a pause on the line. Then Deja said the words that had once felt impossible. "They believe there's enough here to file criminal charges." Journee didn't speak. She couldn't. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the gravity. This wasn't just institutional bias. It was criminal negligence, civil fraud, discrimination with intent. The DA's preliminary review cited evidence of willful misrepresentation of contest results, suppression of academic materials under false pretenses, financial tampering tied to racial profiling, coordinated retaliation against protected speech. If the charges were filed, it would mark the first criminal case in U.S. history using a youth academic discrimination pattern as grounds for federal indictment. Journee sat back against the wall staring at the ceiling. Not long ago, she'd been the girl nobody would believe. Now she was the girl the government was backing. And yet the weight hadn't left. Because the trial wouldn't just challenge policy. It would challenge an entire system, one that had built its power on deciding who was allowed to succeed and who wasn't. The next morning, Journee received a new email. No subject.
No sender listed.
Just one sentence in the body. "Careful what you prove, Carter. People start disappearing when the system gets scared." That afternoon, her lawyer Deja went missing en route to a press briefing. Her phone was found on the passenger seat of her parked car, still recording. Journee Carter didn't cry when the lawyer went missing. Not at first. She sat on the edge of her bed, the news anchor's voice still echoing from her laptop. Civil rights attorney Deja Morrow, known for representing student plaintiffs in the Carter case, was last seen leaving her hotel en route to a press conference. Her phone was later recovered inside her parked car, unlocked, still recording. The footage was never released. Only one still frame circulated. Grainy, shadowed, unclear. Deja's seat empty. The passenger door cracked open. A reflection in the mirror that didn't match the hotel parking lot. Journee stared at the image for an hour. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. She didn't breathe the same way after. The federal lawsuit was placed on temporary hold, pending the investigation. The headlines shifted, from injustice to mystery. Cable news ran segments questioning whether the case had pushed too far. Online trolls joked about activist karma. Even some allies fell silent, unsure what was safe to say anymore. And in the quiet that followed, Journee did something she hadn't done since before the contest. She shut down. She pulled the blackout curtains across her dorm windows. She turned off notifications. She ignored calls, even from her mother. Her appetite disappeared. So did the fire. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the threats, the exhaustion, the paranoia became physical. It lived in her spine, in her lungs, in the way her hand trembled over her keyboard but never typed. The district attorney's office reached out twice, politely, carefully. "We understand this is difficult, but your testimony could anchor the entire case." She ignored both messages. Then the press started to speculate. Carter going silent. Is the star witness backing out? Math prodigy fades as legal pressure mounts. She fought the system, but now she's disappearing. Journee read the headlines in silence. But she didn't respond. Because for once, she didn't care what they thought. Let them speculate. Let them misinterpret her grief. Let them fill airtime with her absence. She was tired of being a symbol. Tired of having to perform survival while still surviving. Then the envelope arrived. No postmark. No return address. Just her name, written in round, slightly smudged pencil handwriting. She almost tossed it, but something about the paper, crinkled, soft at the edges, made her pause. She opened it slowly. Inside was a piece of lined notebook paper, torn from a spiral journal. At the top, in neat, childish print, were 5 words. "Dear Journee, I see you." Her breath caught. She read the rest slowly. "My name is Kinsley. I'm 10. My teacher showed us your speech. Some people said it was bad, but I didn't think so. You looked like someone who understands what it feels like when people pretend you're not there. I like math too, but I don't like how they treat me. The boys say I'm weird when I talk in class. The teacher makes me sit alone because I ask too many questions. Last week they gave my idea to a boy, and told me next time speak up louder. But I was the one who said it first. When I saw you on the news, I told my mom, she's like me but older. I asked if I could write to you. I don't know if you'll read this, but if you do, I just want to say please don't stop. Please don't let them win. If you don't speak, they'll never hear us. Love, Kinsley, from Georgia. Journee stared at the paper. Her fingers gripped it so tightly the edges curled. It was the first time in weeks that she cried. Not from fear, not from frustration, but from clarity. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It never had been. It was about the ones who were watching in silence. The ones who hadn't gotten their shot yet. The ones still learning how to hold their genius without apology. She folded the letter, tucked it into her journal, and stood up. She showered. She got dressed. She called her mother and let her cry for a full minute before speaking. Then she called the Diaz office. Her voice didn't waver. Tell the court I'll testify. The next morning, camera crews crowded the steps of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. It was overcast. The sky that cold, empty gray that makes buildings feel taller, heavier. Security stood on alert, earpieces crackling. Reporters leaned over barricades, voice recorders extended. And then the doors opened. Journee Carter stepped out of the black government SUV. No entourage, no lawyer beside her, just a 16-year-old girl in a black turtleneck, box braids pulled into a high bun, and a notebook clutched in her hand. The notebook with Kinsley's letter tucked inside. The crowd erupted, questions flying, cameras flashing, but she didn't stop. Didn't look around. She walked through the metal detectors, through the marble lobby, through the security checkpoint and into the courtroom, where history was waiting. The judge leaned forward as she took the stand and said, "Miss Carter, we've just received new evidence. Sealed. Do you know someone named Kinsley?" The courtroom was quiet, more silent than Journee Carter had ever known a room could be. All the cameras were off. All the reporters had stepped back. The judge's gavel sat untouched. The only sound was the soft hum of the building's air conditioning as it tried and failed to mask the tension. Journee stood at the lectern. She looked small, 16, black, underfunded school, borrowed tablet, borrowed hope, yet somehow larger than every polished suit in the room. She clutched her notebook, the one that held Kinsley's letter, and took a deep breath. The jurors leaned forward. The lawyers shifted in their seats. The judge nodded for her to begin. She didn't start with numbers. She didn't cite algorithms or proofs. She began with a moment. The fifth-grade math classroom where a teacher accused her of cheating because she finished 20 minutes early and scored higher than anyone else. She described the way the teacher's eyes widened at her answer, then narrowed at her skin. "You must have had help," he said. And even though she answered perfectly, the applause never came, just a hesitant nod and a forced smile. Her voice was calm, steady. The words clean, unadorned. "I remember sitting in the cafeteria when the supply closet light bulbs flickered, and the teacher told us math was for kids who had the kit. I raised my hand to ask for one. The answer was we were already behind. I asked another question and the answer was stay in your lane." She paused. The room held its breath. "My lane wasn't built for me." They expected a technical explanation. They got Lawmakers behind the observers had stopped typing. Reporters who had been live tweeting shifted their gaze. A hush spread. She moved on to the contest stage, the stage where she solved the unsolvable question, where the scoreboard blinked, pending review, then zero, then erased. She described the feeling of the crowd, the empty claps, the index finger of the judge tapping his watch, the whisper behind her by a coach. "She's just a diversity pick." She didn't name him. She didn't need to. The memory carried the weight. "I didn't believe I was winning. I believed I was unerasing myself," she said. She looked toward the jurors. "Because there were thousands before me who never got that chance." She laid out the emotional ledger, the nights her mother mopped floors, and her cracked phone sat beside her, while she watched number theory lectures on YouTube. The days the prize board sent Logan's name in bold gold letters while hers was printed on flimsy paper. The days the dorm office flat her housing file. The nights the scholarship letter turned into an audit demand. The days they called her ungrateful when she said no to the hush money offer. Every time they said, "We believe in merit." She pointed out the subtext, "Merit that looks like you." Then came the twist. Mid-testimony. She paused and pulled out her notebook. The judge allowed her to show it. She placed Kinsley's letter on the lectern and touched it gently. "This is a student I've never met. 10 years old. Georgia," she wrote. If you don't speak, they'll never hear us. A juror's pen stopped. A lawyer's eyes widened. The judge leaned in. This case, she said, is not just about what one young black girl faced in one contest. It's about what they anticipate from all of us who dare to excel outside their blueprint. Her voice cracked then, a single tremor, enough to show the fatigue, the anger, the hope mixed inside her. I testified today not just for me. I testify for the ones who will come next. For kids told they don't belong. For teachers told they won't risk the board. For families who built brilliance out of borrowed lights and cracked desks. The room shifted. The jurors looked at one another. The stenographer paused. The transcript. Lawyers on the defense side exchanged glances. The head counsel coughed. She didn't stop. When they erased my name from the scoreboard, they tried to make me invisible. When they threatened my voice, they tried to make me silent. But when thousands of kids watched, I became louder than their system. And now we're here. Silence hung heavy. Then the unexpected. A former education secretary, someone who had served under 2 administrations, raised her hand from the back row of observers. She stood. The camera crews outside caught it, though no flash penetrated the closed-doors chamber. The secretary walked to the rail. "Young lady," she said softly, "whatever happens in this courtroom, know this, we owe you a new system, not just a new result." Journee swallowed hard. And then, the judge broke the moment. "Miss Carter, we acknowledge receipt of newly submitted documents from the DA's office. We will recess until 3 p.m. while they review them. Please remain available." Journee stepped down, the notebook in hand, her palms dry. She crossed the courtroom floor, all eyes tracking her. The hallway outside was lined with media crews, but the doors were still closed. The world on hold. She crossed midway when a security guard handed her a sealed envelope. The same guard had once informed her dorm housing was under review. She looked inside just long enough to read 3 words. "We're watching you." She slipped it into her jacket pocket. Uncomfortable swaying in the hallway. Her heart didn't race. It pounded. She didn't fear. She calculated. Her eyes went to her lawyer, who approached with a grave expression. "Journee," the lawyer said quietly. "The DA wants to interview you later this week. The documents they include more than we expected. Your contest board, the board's sponsor emails, and a second whistleblower." Journee nodded. She didn't ask questions, because she already knew what was next. They weren't just trying her. They were testing her. She reached the elevator, pressed the button. The doors closed. Then the twist that no one saw coming. The elevator lights flickered. On the wall beside the car mirror, someone had typed in magic marker. "Math is not your weapon. This case is." Her blood turned cold. She whispered under her breath. "But math is my proof." The doors opened. She stepped out into the lobby. The world waiting. For a moment she closed her eyes and steadied herself. She reminded herself of what she told Kinsley in her mind. "If you don't speak, they'll never hear us." Now they were listening. And not just listening. They were watching. As she walked to the car, she glanced at her phone. A notification flashed. "Live broadcast starting in 5 minutes. Federal courtroom. Case Carter. Tune in." And the screen showed a countdown timer ticking down. The morning light in the Carter household came muted. The blinds were drawn slightly, as if to soften the world outside. The coffee maker hummed in the background. Deidre Carter's feet shuffled to the kitchen, before the sun fully rose. The steady ritual of work, chores and struggle still filled the hours. But this morning felt different. Journee Carter sat at the kitchen table, her freshly pressed blazer laid out next to her backpack. She stared at the list of institutions that had offered scholarships, honors, speaking engagements. Some had been withdrawn, some put on hold, some revoked entirely. On her phone, the newsfeed scrolled the story anew. Controversy over Teen Maths Stars Awards. Foundation demands return of medals and plaques. She rubbed her temples, because they were trying again. This time to erase not just her win, but her identity as winner. By lunchtime, the Conservative Foundation, its name tucked behind legal speak in news reports, had initiated a campaign. Letters sent to the board of the Regional Math Invitational, the youth board, and even to the press. "We regret we cannot endorse the results in good faith," one header read. "We are withdrawing funding effective immediately." The old familiar pattern: excellence achieved, discomfort raised, rollback attempted. Journee's mother stood in the kitchen doorway, arms folded. "They're going for the trophies now," she said quietly. Journee nodded. Then we'll redefine the trophies, she replied softly. In the days that followed, the announcements came fast. The contest board announced that several awards pending review would be placed in limbo. A list of alumni winners was quietly archived, Journee's name omitted from the Hall of Champions roster. Logan Pierce's academy reaffirmed his legacy status with a glowing email, while Journee's donor letter was referenced as under investigation. But then the unexpected happened. A press release from Massachusetts Institute of Technology crossed her inbox. Headline: MIT launches the Carter Innovation Grant, empowering young minds in underrepresented STEM. She and Deidre stared at the screen. MIT had not only ignored the smear campaign, they had issued a public statement. We believe brilliance arises in all environments. In recognition of Journee Carter's demonstration of exceptional problem-solving under adversity, MIT is founding the Carter Innovation Grant, a new fund dedicated to supporting students who have been marginalized yet show exceptional aptitude in STEM. Journee exhaled. Her mother wept. In one moment, the system that tried to bury her recognized her. In one moment, the narrative shifted. MIT's statement explained the grant would provide full tuition, research opportunities, mentorship, but more than that, it would be unrestricted funds for students from disadvantaged schools, supporting travel, supplies, tutoring, a version of the opportunity she had always been denied. The press seized the story. From erased to endowed. Black girl genius gets her own grant at MIT. Math contest rigged. So academia responds. Suddenly, Logans and foundations and boards and lobbyists had to answer to MIT. And they did. Within a week, 2 other major institutions followed. National Aeronautics and Space Administration announced a Carter Fellowship for STEM equity, supporting minority youth internships in science and space research. Google LLC declared a Carter Scholars Program to pair tech mentorship with scholarships for girls of color in mathematics and computer science. Journee watched the logos, the announcements, the headlines. She still felt the weight. But now the weight carried possibility. She didn't flaunt it. She didn't post it on social media. She simply sat with the change. Her mother asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded. "Yes. But not for me," she said. "For the ones who come after." The next day at school, she walked past the same classrooms, the same hallways where teachers had told her to stay in her lane. The difference this time, the same eyes followed, but somewhere they registered something new. A math teacher who had once handed her a retest with suspicion, now nodded at her quietly. A lab assistant who once ignored her research email now paused and asked, "Can I talk to you after class?" She said yes. In the lab, not under lights. She spoke softly. "I want to build a program, peer tutoring, materials, free access for schools like mine." The lab assistant smiled. "I've read your court's testimony. Will help." Journee realized the landscape had changed. Not completely. Not yet. Because boards still tried to strip awards. Foundations still sent lawyers. But now when they did, they faced MIT, NASA, Google, a wave of public support. 2 weeks later she received a packaged envelope. Inside were the inaugural Carter Innovation Grant materials. Welcome letter, contract, mentor list, MIT campus calendar. She opened it and found one page handwritten. "When they try to erase your name, let your legacy write itself." She placed it in her journal. Then the call came. From the White House. Her phone rang. The caller ID said simply, "WH Task Force." Her mother held the phone first. She handed it over. A voice said, "Ms. Carter, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy would like you to serve on a national education task force on STEM equity. Your participation would bring critical perspective to the future of learning in America." Journee's heart raced. She looked at her mother. "Me?" Her mother nodded. "They want your voice." And it wasn't for the trophy. It was for the microphone. As she hung up, her phone vibrated again. This time a message from Logan Pierce. "Congratulations. I know what they did was wrong. I'd like to meet." Journee stared at the screen, her past and present colliding, and wondered what he truly meant. The early morning sun filtered through the high windows of a converted warehouse in downtown Atlanta. The former rail freight loading dock now reimagined as the headquarters for the newly launched Carter Equity Institute. The open floor plan, exposed ductwork and polished concrete floor bore the faint smell of transformation. Journee Carter walked through the space in her usual quiet steadiness, braids pulled back, notebook in hand. Scanning walls now covered with colorful posters. Black brilliant. Make it visible. STEM for every zip. rewrite the rules. Just 2 years earlier, she'd been dismissed as too loud, too visible, even too risky. Now she was hosting the launch of an institute built to amplify voices like hers. Voices that the system once asked to be quiet. She paused at a glass-walled conference room and observed the team inside. Program directors, curriculum specialists, district liaisons, all gathered for a briefing. The headline on the screen read, "Training 6,000 educators, impacting 40 school districts." She allowed herself a small inward smile. The first cohort had already completed their weekend intensive training. Educators from underfunded districts across 6 states arrived with skepticism, fatigue, supply shortage stories. They left with laptops, curriculum toolkits, and a new vocabulary: equity-minded math, asset-based teaching, gifted by design. CEI was not just about access, it was about reframing brilliance. As the briefing concluded, Journee stepped to the front of the room. She cleared her throat softly. "When I solved that problem at the contest," she said, voice calm, "it wasn't just about numbers, it was about seeing what others refused to look at. This institute is our chance to see the ones they refused to believe existed." The team applauded. The moment felt good, but not like victory. It felt like beginning. Later that week they held their first public event, a live-streamed town hall across 4 time zones. Thousands tuned in. Students, parents, educators. Journee answered questions about everything. Her journey, the contest rigging, the lawsuit, the scholarship offer, and now the mission of C. She spoke about redistributing resources, rewriting criteria, dismantling silent biases. The comments flooded in. "My school lunch line runs out too soon. Can you help? I finished an advanced math class early, yet got denied the nomination. Same here. I'm a black girl in STEM. Thank you for seeing me." Each comment landed like a pulse. She didn't respond to all of them, but she read them. Everything mattered. In the ensuing months, CEI's calendar filled rapidly. Workshops in urban centers, weekend math equity labs in rural districts, partnerships with historically black colleges, a summer math camp designed for girls of color. The flyer read, "Brilliant minds don't wait for permission." Journee visited the first camp, watching the cheers as the campers solved complex logic puzzles and high-level problem sets, some of them for the first time without whispering, "I'm not supposed to know this." One afternoon, as she walked the hallway at CEI, a new intern approached her. "Miss Carter," she said, voice soft. "I just wanted to tell you, I was told I was out of place in calculus last semester. I dropped out. Today I enrolled in your prep course." Journee smiled and offered her notebook. "Keep your marker ready," she said. "We're rewriting things." But even as the movement grew, resistance sharpened. Boards that once quietly erased her were now scrambling in public. A national think tank published a critique of CEI, titled "Equity or Entitlement?" A case study. Anonymous bloggers accused the Institute of diversity theatrics and dumbing down the math. Some school districts told parents that the new curriculum would lower standards. Journee felt the familiar ache, the same doubt, the same threat. But this time, she had defenders, with data, with voice, with legitimacy. Late one evening, she reviewed the quarterly impact report with her team. The numbers glowed on the screen. 6,000 educators trained, 40 school districts committed. 85% of participating educators reported increased confidence in teaching advanced math. 30% increase in nominations of underrepresented students for gifted programs in partner districts. She exhaled. "We're not just showing up," she said. "We're showing change." Her associate offered a nod. "And the movement is just beginning." Then came the twist. At midnight they received an alert. Unauthorized login attempt on CEI's cloud servers. The IT director assessed it immediately. "Someone's tried to take it down," he said. "We're in a stack attack. Access logs show one account breached. Deleted files, altered access logs, timed erase protocols initiated." They isolated the damage. No data was lost, thanks to backups. But then a file appeared in the system. A single text file titled, "Not welcome." Inside, "You're still not welcome." The message came from a masked terminal. No name, no affiliation, just a threat. Journee stared at the screen. Then the silence in the room grew heavy. "What do you want us to do?" her deputy asked. Journee closed her eyes. "We go public tomorrow," she said. "We show them we're unerasable." The next morning, the entire CEI team stood together on a stage in front of dozens of reporters. Journee opened her address. Last night someone tried to shut us down. They threatened us. They erased files. But what they don't understand is that this movement runs on truth, on visibility, on collective power. You cannot delete us when we delete exclusion. Phones flashed. Cameras rolled. And as the statement circulated, the hashtag "Still Here, Still Brilliant" trended nationwide. The hacker's message didn't silence. It amplified. Later that day, a small email landed in Journee's inbox. No subject, but the body contained one line. "You have their eye now. Get ready to lead." She looked at the sender. Unknown. Then she looked around her office. The posters, the training materials, the young educators bustling in the background. She whispered to herself, "Yes, I am getting ready to lead." And the nation was watching. That night, the White House sent an encrypted invitation to Journee's phone. "Your leadership is requested. November 15, Washington, D.C. Task Force Kickoff." She glanced at her screen, exhaled, and realized the movement had just become federal. The summer air in Atlanta held a distinct drag, as if even the warmth felt heavy with expectation. But inside the auditorium of Carter Equity Institute's newly opened event center, the climate crackled with something different: purpose. Rows upon rows of chairs were filled, not with polished suits only, but with educators in casual dress, students gripping tablets, parents who carried permission slips, and hope in equal measure. The banner draped across the stage read, "Youth Equity Scorecard 20. At the head of that stage stood Journee Carter, 16, unwavering, still the girl from underfunded schools, cracked tablets, borrowed time, but now standing not alone, but anchored by a movement she had helped raise. Her brown eyes scanned the audience, absorbing the faces of the 6,000 instructors she and her team had trained, the 40 districts that had signed on, the students who represented zip codes, others refused to fund. She cleared her throat gently. "When I solved that impossible question 2 years ago," she said, voice low but firm, "I didn't just win a contest, I exposed a system that assumed people like me were invisible." Applause rippled. The room leaned forward. "Today," she continued, "we launched data, real numbers, real change. The Youth Equity Scorecard will track nominations of Black and Brown students in gifted and STEM programs, funding brackets by zip code, resource gaps per student. We will shine a light, because you can't fix what you can't see." The scorecard's dashboard glowed on the large screen. Interactive maps, district-by-district breakdowns, color-coded charts. One chart lit bright red, high resource gap, low nomination rate. Another glowed blue, improvement year 1.23%. Journee pointed at the red zone. "This is our starting line." A hush followed. The network she had built, educators, allies, students, donors, even former skeptics, filled the room. She recognized many faces from her first workshops, the late nights she spent tutoring, the bus rides she took to schools forgotten by the system. They were here now, with her. Yet change always brings backlash. Within hours of the launch, a coordinated campaign hit social media, local news outlets, and email inboxes across the partner districts. The headline blasted, "Teen activist math star accused of scorecard bias, districts under review." Anonymous emails claim Journee's scorecard data was one-sided, politically driven, unverified. A conservative think tank issued a statement, "Equity metrics are redefining meritocratic standards." Journee's cell phone buzzed endlessly. Her mother's text read, "They're doing it again." Deidre Carter sat in the audience, prouder than ever and worried as ever. But this time, Journee had defense. She stepped off stage after the launch and found her lead attorney, Marisol Hayes, waiting in the wings. Marisol nodded and showed her the data bundle on her tablet: student testimonials, district commitment letters, internal board emails, evidence the campaign could not simply dismiss. "They're firing everything they've got," Marisol said quietly. "But we've got the ammo." Journee exhaled. The unexpected twist came later that afternoon. A former regional math contest judge, one of the men who had manually overridden Journee's score years ago, posted a video confession. He admitted his role, his bias, his guilt. The clip exploded online. It was raw, unfiltered. "I didn't want to believe it then," he said. "But she outcalculated my assumptions." The campaign's momentum shifted. What had been an isolated controversy now appeared systemic. Journee's network activated. Students posted their own stories. Teachers uploaded old nomination lists. Districts forwarded internal memos. The hashtag #MeScorecard truth trended. Journee stood in the lobby of the auditorium, absorbing the atmosphere. A teacher from a rural district hugged her. "Your work just gave me proof to take to my board," she said. A student tapped her shoulder. "Thank you for letting me count." Journee didn't respond with speeches. She nodded. She listened. Later that evening, as the guests departed, she slipped away to her dorm room at the Partner College campus facility. The room was modest. 2 beds, a window overlooking the parking lot, textbooks stacked on the desk. But it felt like mission control. She opened her laptop. An encrypted email popped up. "Meet at 8, emergent data breach attempt. All systems secure but vulnerability noted." Her monitor flashed lines of code. Access logs. IP addresses. Someone had tried to infiltrate the scorecard system. Her heart thudded. "They're trying to kill the data," she said aloud. Her roommate, a fellow student intern, looked up yawning. "It's okay," she said. "Not our first breach." Journee nodded. "They don't want us revealing what they've always hidden." She pressed send on a message. "Alert the network. Lock down. Watch the portal." The next day, the story made headlines again. Hackers attempt to take down equity dashboard. But this time the frame changed. Not a lone rebel, but an organized threat to transparency. Major outlets picked it up. The public narrative shifted again, from teen activist under attack to national movement under siege. Journee walked into the venue for the follow-up briefing. Her team sat in a circle around the screen. The IT director reported, "No data lost. Backup secured. We traced intrusion to a proxy server with links to a political consultancy. They tried to erase the ledger." A wave of murmurs passed through the circle. Journee looked at the circle of people: lawyers, educators, students, data analysts. The network was larger than she had imagined. "Then let's make sure they can't." She tapped her pen on the desk. "Our next move: public release of district-by-district transparency, and a coalition of 200 student ambassadors from underrepresented zones." The movement wasn't just surviving, it was scaling. By the afternoon, the campaign shifted yet again. The hack attempt became a rallying cry. Student newsrooms across the country ran stories. "My math teacher said I didn't fit the quiz. Then I saw the scorecard." School districts held emergency meetings. Boards withdrew statements. Donors reaffirmed commitments. Walking across campus that evening, Journee passed a pair of students wearing t-shirts. "I am Nomination Lake, and my zip code counts." She smiled. But the burden of leadership weighed. She wondered if she was still the girl who solved the stage problem, or now someone else entirely. The phone buzzed again. A message from the White House. "Task force kickoff scheduled. Offer letter pending." She tucked it away, breathing shallow. That night, the dorm room's window overlooked the silent parking lot. The quiet was deceptive. The shadows seemed longer. She sat at the desk, stared at the screen. Then she looked at Kinsley's letter again. The little girl from Georgia, 10 years old. "If you don't speak, they'll never hear us." Journee's reply lay in launch. She opened the email from her parents' graduation ceremony details. Yes. Her high school graduation still loomed. The same school that had once overlooked her. Tomorrow would be the day. As the sun set on her high school graduation stage, the following evening, a single drone hovered above, carrying a wide banner across the sky. "NASA confirms. You're cleared for launch." The crowd gasped. Journee looked up and realized the network she built had just signaled an orbit. They said she didn't belong. They tried to bury her voice, erase her proof, rewrite her future. But she rose, not for applause, but for every kid still waiting to be seen. If you've ever been dismissed for who you are, if this story broke something open in you, type yes if you believe in justice. Subscribe if you refuse to stay silent.